When Jonas bought the old mansion by the edge of the woods, he thought he'd made the deal of a lifetime. 5 rooms, a vast attic, a wild garden, all for less than the price of a city apartment. The realtor had hesitated only for a second before handing him the contract and muttering, "Some places just need to be lived in." Jonas laughed, signed, and moved in 3 weeks later. It didn't take long for him to notice that the house made noises. Not the usual creaks or groans of old wood. This was deeper. A low, rhythmic sound that seemed to echo through the walls. Almost like the house was breathing. That first night, Jonas couldn't sleep. Rain beat against the windows. A loose board tapped somewhere in the attic. But that wasn't what kept him awake. It was the steady sound of inhaling and exhaling coming from behind his bedroom wall. Slow, heavy, like a giant creature slumbering deep within the plaster. He got up, pressed his ear to the wall. Silence. Nothing. But the moment he lay back down, it started again. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. He held his breath, certain it might just be his imagination. But the sound continued, steady and indifferent. Something in the house was alive. The next morning, Jonas searched every inch of the house. He tapped the walls, opened every cabinet, and even crawled into the damp basement. Nothing. Just dust, cobwebs, and the smell of rotting wood. When he came back up, he noticed something odd. The living room looked different. The carpet was slightly crooked. The coffee table stood a few inches closer to the window. He frowned. He was sure he hadn't moved anything. As he pushed the table back into place, he heard it again. That faint, heavy breathing, this time from beneath the floorboards. He froze. The boards trembled under his feet. Just a subtle vibration, but enough for him to feel it. And in that moment, Jonas was certain. The house knew he was there. 2 days later, an old woman knocked on his door. She introduced herself as Mrs. Brenner, who lived at the end of the forest path. "So you're the new owner," she said, her voice flat. "Yes," Jonas smiled. "It's nice and quiet here." Her eyes narrowed. "It doesn't like quiet. When it's too silent, it makes its own sounds." He gave an uneasy laugh. "You mean the house?" She nodded. "It doesn't like to be alone. It remembers." Before he could ask more, she turned and walked away. Her final words drifted back through the wind. "When it breathes at night, don't answer." 3 nights later, the storm came. Thunder, wind, sheets of rain crashing against the windows. Jonas lay awake again. The house was breathing louder now. The whole bedroom seemed to pulse with each exhale. Then came something new. Between the breaths, whispers. He couldn't make out words, only the feeling that someone was speaking right next to his ear. His skin prickled. He reached for his phone to use its flashlight. Dead battery. Outside, a branch slammed against the window, and in that flash of motion, he saw something in the mirror. A pale figure standing behind him. Just for a second. then gone. He flicked the light on. Nothing. Only his reflection. But something had changed. On the wall behind his bed, the wallpaper was darker, damp, shaped like a handprint. And with every breath the house took, the hand grew larger. By morning, Jonas had had enough. He needed answers. He climbed to the attic, a place he'd avoided since moving in because the stairs were weak and the air reeked of mold. It was cold up there. Dust hung in the light slanting through a cracked window. Old furniture, broken frames, forgotten boxes. And at the far end, a small door. He could have sworn it hadn't been there before. The door was made of dark wood, its lock rusted shut, as if it had been bolted from the inside. Jonas grabbed a crowbar. With a loud crack, the lock snapped. A rush of air hit him. Hot, damp, and smelling not of mold or earth, but of flesh. There was no room beyond. Just a narrow tunnel, black, slick, and pulsing, like the inside of something alive. And deep inside it, faintly glowing, an eye opened. The house exhaled. Jonas stumbled back, tripping over a chest. The entire building began to shake. Wood cracked, windows shattered, doors slammed. Footsteps echoed, slow, heavy, dragging, moving through the halls below. He ran for the stairs, but the hallway stretched longer and longer as he moved. Walls shifted, doors slid over windows, and the house twisted itself into something new, something living. He reached the living room just in time to see the wall behind the couch, the one with the handprint, begin to bulge. Another handprint formed beside it, then another, until the entire wall seemed covered in hands pressing outward. The breathing was deafening now, hot, trembling, rhythmic. Jonas screamed. The house answered with a gulp. When he opened his eyes, everything was dark. No thunder, no wind, just silence. He was lying on cold stone. The air was wet and metallic. He got up and realized he wasn't in the house anymore. He was inside it. The walls around him were fleshy, veined. The floor pulsed with a heartbeat. Somewhere deep in the darkness, something was breathing. He screamed, but the sound didn't echo. It was absorbed. Something moved ahead of him, a shape that looked almost human, but wrong, like someone had tried to carve a man out of wood and forgotten the details. The face was smooth until it opened. It was his own face. "You woke me up," it said, in his voice but older, cracked. "Now you must stay, so I can rest." It touched his shoulder, and Jonas understood that the house had found a new breath to replace its old one. A week later, a fresh sign stood at the forest road. "For sale, spacious property, recently vacated." The realtor smiled warmly as a young woman signed the papers. "Lovely old place," he said casually. "Has a lot of character." As she left, he glanced at the upstairs window. A faint movement behind the curtain caught his eye. And somewhere deep within the house, almost too quiet to hear, it breathed.